Hello everybody, welcome to this instruction video. In this video I'd like to show you how to do color pooling, and I'd like to show you the way that I do it, which is based on a foundation chain and then just going with your color patterns and just seeing where it leads you. You could also use this technique to do argyle color pooling, but I've noticed that the yarn that I'm using, which is a really long color changing yarn, it doesn't become the classic argyle shape, actually the diamonds, but becomes more of a flowing, soft color pattern. I'll take you step by step through the sequences that I do to do this color pooling. I hope it's a useful video for you. Thank you for watching. Just a few words about the yarn that you need to have for color pooling. You need a color changing yarn, obviously, but you need a yarn that has a distinct change from one color to the next, so that you can really clearly see where your color sequences start and where they end. Now this yarn from Scheepjes Invicta Matterhorn has that. If you look at the yarn, you can see it has a clear, I'm not going to pull this out, but if you'll look here, you'll see there are points where it's yellow, and at a certain point it's clearly blue, red or brown, and this color change is what you need. So I'm actually using, in the video, I'm using this version here, which is the green, blue, pink version, because it has very distinct color changes that are good to see on the camera. And from this yarn I'm actually doing a blanket, which I'll show you later on a bit more of. But you need a yarn that has this distinct color change from one color to the next. It doesn't, as such, it doesn't matter how long your color sequences are, but I found that if your total color length is more than 20 meters, just don't go there, because you're really making life hard for yourself. So choose a yarn that has the color sequence going from one color to the next in distinct stages, and that has a rhythm to its color sequence, and use a hook size that's appropriate for your yarn. I mean, this is a sock yarn, so a reasonably thin hook. This is a 3mm hook. So I'll take you step by step through doing yarn pooling, and I'll use this color sequence to do so. Step 1 is take your yarn, and actually I'm going to open up this yarn, and we're going to investigate the color sequence. So find the starting point. Here's the starting point of the yarn, and you're going to undo this yarn. Undo, 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 and that's going to be quite a challenge, because this is a long color changing yarn. You see here, this starts here with a bit of a dark blue, and then at a certain point it changes to green. Let me just zoom in a little bit that you can see that a bit better. You can see here there's a color change from blue to green. And this is a sudden color change. That's important for using this technique of color pooling. You need this sudden change. Okay, so that's blue, and then this is green. Now I've got a lot of green here. I'm just going to roll all this green until I get to the next color. And I of course don't know which color that's going to be and how much green that is, so that could be quite a lot actually, because you never know until you've completely investigated your yarn. And I still have green, I've still got green, still got some green. Oh wait, now I've got blue. So now I've got again a color change. So I've got the blue, then I've got the green, but now I've got blue again, and this is a different blue to this one. If you've got them two next to each other, you see that this is actually more purple and the next one is a blue. So okay, so that's a blue. So I had the green, and now I've got the blue. So I'm going to investigate the blue, and I'm going to continue doing this until I get to basically to where I started with, because I want to see just what my colors are doing. I'm going to continue doing this, and when I have things a little bit organized, I'll see you again. Right, now I've got my yarn slightly organized now. Remember we started, we had a bit of dark blue, and then there was an awful lot of green. Then there's a little bit of a go-between, and then there's a lot of light blue. I'll call it light blue. then goes over to a bit of a purple shade, which at a certain point changes quite well into a pink shade. Oops, got my hook snagged. And that then shows a sudden color change to a yellow shade, which again changes to a dark blue shade, because this is a different blue to that. This is more of a purplish blue. And then that again changes back to green. And this green and this green is exactly the same color. You see, these two are exactly the same. So that tells me this is my color sequence. So it goes from, so my color sequence, if I start at the green, is green, blue, purple, pink, yellow, purple, and then green again. That's important for color pooling, is this color organization. You want a yarn that has color organized in a certain rhythm. Doesn't matter if it's one shade that's repeated every second time, or whether it's 7 shades like you have here, or whether it's 3 shades, doesn't matter. What's important is that you've got distinct colors that you can identify, and that you can identify the change from one color to the next. For example, this here is a very good color change where you go from the pink to the yellow, and that's actually a point that I'm going to use. If you see here, you can see very well how it changes from pink to yellow, and that's an abrupt color change, a very specific point. And this is actually a point that I'm going to use to my advantage, because I can use this to identify where a color sequence starts and finishes. So what I'm going to do to start this whole yarn pooling project is I'm going to ignore all of this and use this point here as my starting point, because this is an easy to identify point, the way you go from the pink to the yellow. Because yes, you can also use any other point where you go from the purple to the pink, for example, but that's a harder point to see because of the shades that are in here. So, or from the green to the blue. This is also actually reasonably easy to see in this yarn. But I'm going to use this point here. So I'm going to do, I'm going to put a slip knot on my hook exactly where these two colors meet. So I'm just going to put a slip knot on my hook. And I'm not happy with the position. I really want it at that starting point. I'll zoom in again in a moment. And now I'm happy with my starting point. I'm going to zoom in. And what you can see now is that on my hook, on the one side I have the pink, on the other side I have the yellow, and this is going to be the starting point of my project. So what I'm going to do is all of this yarn here, I'm going to cut this off. Doesn't matter anymore. And I'm going to start at the point where the pink goes over to the yellow. So what you want to do, if you've got a different yarn with a different color sequence, look at your yarn, identify your yarn, and find a place where you can see clearly that it changes from one color to the next, and make that your starting point. Now that we have our yarn identified, understand how the color sequences work, and we found an easy starting point for a color sequence, we're ready to start the project. I'm going to start by working foundation half double crochets for 2 color sequences. That means I'm going to start with a chain 3 and then work a foundation half double crochet in there. And if you don't feel comfortable with working the foundation half double crochet, you can also work a foundation single crochet, but I do suggest that you work a foundation stitch because of the long color changing yarn. It's better than using chain stitches, otherwise you're going to have chain stitches from here to Tokyo. So I suggest, unless maybe if you live in Tokyo, so I suggest you use that foundation half double crochet. And I'm using 2 color sequences so that you've got freedom for which stitch you're actually going to be using, because these foundation stitches do not contribute to your actual pattern. They are merely there as a base. And doing these foundation stitches takes time, I know, and I'm telling you to do 2 color sequences, which means that you're going to be doing quite a long stretch of these. But take your time on this, it'll be all worth the effort. So as you can see, I'm doing these foundation half double crochets. If you want to see more clearly how I do these foundation stitches, I've got a separate video for that, which I'll just link in here also. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue. I've now worked a few of these. I'm going to continue until I have my first color sequence done, and then I'll see you again. Then you can just see exactly what I'm doing. I'm going to be working, basically I'm going to be working foundation double crochets, half double crochets, sorry, until I reach the yellow again. I've now done 1 color sequence. You can see we started off with the yellow. So these are the foundation half double crochets we started off with, the yellow. That turns into these purple stitches. Now you can actually see your color change quite well. That goes onto light green stitches, that goes into blue stitches, goes on to at a certain point becomes purple stitches, which become pink stitches, and the pink is again a rather long stretch, and then at a certain point now I have again a yellow loop on my hook, and this loop marks for me the start of my next color sequence. So I've now had 1 complete color sequence because I'm back at my starting point here with the yellow. I also had that yellow on my hook when I started. So this is important that you can identify when you start, because you need this effect to be able to shift your stitches and make sure that your color pooling occurs even in the first place. So if you have yarn where you can't identify this starting point of a sequence, don't even try it. I can guarantee you that it won't work. I've now done 1 color sequence. I'm actually going to do 2 color sequences as a base. My base will be much longer than I need, but the reason for that is to give me freedom so that I can use whatever stitch I want to actually work my pattern. So I've now done 1 color sequence of half double crochets, foundation half double crochets. I'm actually going to do a second sequence. So I'm just going to continue to do exactly what I've already done and just work a few more, actually quite a few more foundation stitches. And this yarn is reasonably fine. I'm using a 3mm hook with this, and once you pass the foundation and you actually start working your pattern, it's going to go very fast, but it's just this foundation row which takes some time. So I've done the first stitch now again, so I'm going to basically be doing the same amount of stitches that I've already done, and then I'm ready to actually start the pattern. I've now worked the foundation stitches for 2 color sequences. So let's just have a look, because it's a very long snake at the moment. Just look where we started. We started here with the yellow part, then came a blue part, a green part, a lighter blue, a bit of purple, pink, which is again a long stretch, and here's a yellow part again, and this yellow part is exactly the same as this yellow, because you can see here there's the yellow, and then there's the blue again that lines up, and then there's the green that lines up, and then there's the light blue again that lines up, a bit of purple and pink, and I'm now at the beginning. I'm at the end of the pink, so I'm now at the yellow stitch again. So I've now done this color sequence 2 full cycles. The reason why I do 2 cycles as opposed to 1 is to give me some freedom as to which stitches I'm going to work. You will not need all of these foundation stitches, so you have made a few that you're not going to use, so my apologies. But as such, this gives you a lot of freedom as to which stitch pattern you're going to work, because sometimes you'll need 1 color sequence, sometimes you'll need 1.5 color sequences. You don't always know beforehand exactly how many stitches you need. So that's the reason why I have 2 foundation sequences made. So now we can continue with the actual pattern. I'm going to work my first pattern row, and my pattern is in essence going to be double crochets for every stitch. That's going to be my pattern. No fancy stitches for this project. So I'm going to start with a chain 3. That's my first double crochet, and then turn my work. And you've got a long chain of foundation stitches, which you're not all going to use. Now I'm going to do is I'm going to work double crochets until I have this yellow yarn on my hook again. So the first stitch I've just worked, so that's that one, that's a chain 3, counts for that. Then I go to my next stitch and I work a double crochet. So now I've got 2 double crochets. That's 2. I'm going to work a third one, and I'm going to continue with this, work a double crochet in every stitch until I get to the yellow again. So I'm going to run through my entire color sequence, and this will take me a while because this is quite a long color sequence. If your color sequence is shorter, it will of course go faster. And I'm choosing to do all double crochets here, but you don't have to stick to double crochets. You can also do other stitches. You can also do a moss stitch, for example, or you could do single crochets, or you could maybe even do a pattern which has more of a lacy feel to it. But what's important is that whatever pattern you're working, you're going to work that for one full color sequence. You see how I'm already going on to color number 2 here, and you'll notice that your colors do not line up with your foundation stitches. That's just that doesn't matter, that's not a problem. The foundation stitches are, as the word says, they're just a foundation to give you a base to work on. And personally, I like a foundation stitch more than I like a chain stitch, because it gives you more flexibility in the project. Because if you pull here, there's much more flexibility than if this was a chain. And I choose the half double crochet because that gives you a little bit of body, but not too much. I like it more than the single crochet, the foundation single, which I found incredibly fiddly, and but it's less prominent than a foundation double crochet. So I find the foundation half double is nicer. It's a nice go-between. So I'm still working a double crochet in every stitch, and I'm going to continue until I have the yellow yarn on my hook again. I've come to the end of my color sequence. To show you what I've done so far, I've worked a lot of double crochets. See, I'll just see where we started. Here we started with the yellow, worked a series of purple stitches, then we were going on to the green, bit of dark green, light blue, bit of pink, a lot of pink stitches actually, and at a certain point I suddenly have the yellow yarn on my hook again, and this is a point where I stop. Now I'm at the start of my color sequence again, and you'll notice you have not worked all your foundation stitches. Depending on what stitch you work will determine how many stitches of these you have left. What you're going to do is you can cut this off at any point. Just take a comfortable length. You can cut this off and then just work away the yarn tail here. You'll unpick these stitches and then work away that yarn tail. For the moment I'm just going to leave it on because it's not in the way. And now we can actually continue on to the next row. For row 2, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to undo this last stitch. So just the one stitch I'm undoing. The reason why I'm doing this is you want to get your color patterns to move, and this piece of pink yarn that I still have here will now cause all my stitches to move forward. I'll show you in a moment what I mean by that. If you've worked a pattern, for example a double crochet chain 1, double crochet chain 1, you'll remove an entire stitch pattern, so that would be a double crochet and a chain 1. Or if you've done wave stitches, you'll remove one wave. The point is you want to remove something that makes up one stitch pattern. So one stitch or one stitch pattern, remove that. And I'm now ready to start row 2. So I'm again going to do chain 1, chain 3, which is my first double crochet, and then I can turn my work. And now again we're going to work a double crochet in every stitch. The first one I'm skipping because that's a chain 3, that counts for that, and then work a double crochet again in every stitch until you get to the end of the row. And actually at this point you can just continue working your stitch pattern. I'm just going to work a double crochet on every stitch. In essence you can keep on doing this for the next 50 rows, because that's it. What you'll see happening is as you work more and more rows, you'll see colors starting to align, and that's actually what we want. So I'll work a few more rows to show you what we mean by this alignment, because at this point you don't really see very much. You see pink here and you see yellow there, and you're thinking, oh, okay, whatever. So just continue, work this second row, and then from row 3 onwards you'll start seeing color alignment, and that's color alignment, yarn pooling, color pooling is what we're going for. So I'm just going to continue with my pattern. I'm going to work a double crochet on every stitch till I get to the other side. Almost to the end of row 2, I just need to work 2 last double crochets. It's on the second last stitch, and then on my chain 3, my turning chains, I also need to work a double crochet. So now I've worked a double crochet on every stitch for row 2. Now let's just take a look at where we are at the moment. So this is what we've worked so far. You've worked row 1 and 2, and what you'll notice is that row 1 and row 2 are exactly the same, well, almost, with a few details, with the exception that your color sequence is reversed. You see here row 1 here starts with the yellow and then becomes the purple, and row 2 starts on the other side with the yellow and then becomes the purple. So the color sequence is the same, but it goes in reverse order, and this is actually an important thing for what we want to achieve with color pooling. So, and I've got a reasonably broad band here because of the stitch pattern that I'm using. If you use a stitch which has a much denser pattern, you'll of course your pattern will be smaller. If your yarn sequence is smaller, your pattern will be smaller. If you use something that's larger, a more open structure, you might even have a wider pattern. So that all depends on which yarn you're using and what pattern you're using. But what I have now done is I'm now at the end of row 2, and I've worked a color sequence pattern 2, and I've worked the same pattern coming back. I'm now going to work row 3, and that's when the actual color pooling will start to occur. For row 3, I'm going to do exactly the same as I've done before. So for me that's a chain 3 as my starting double crochet, turn my work, and now I'm going to work a double crochet on every stitch. And I'm just going to do that for a few stitches, and when I'm about halfway, I'd just like to show you the color pattern and alignment that's starting to occur, and that's easiest to do if I already have a few stitches on here. So I'm just quickly going to work a series of double crochets until about tell them about here, and then I can really show you the color alignment. I've now worked a few stitches, and what you can see here is that the blue from row 3 that I'm now working is aligning to the blue from row 1, and this alignment is what we call color pooling, and is exactly what we're aiming for. Now the larger your fabric is, the more rows you have, the easier it is to see what I mean with that. So I'm just going to show you a different fabric where I've worked a lot of rows so you can actually see the alignment much better. Here you can see a fabric that I've worked before. This is with a different colorway, but it's the same yarn. It's also the Invicta Matterhorn yarn. But what you can see here is what we call color pooling. So you can see here row 1, which is here, it has stripes and then blue and then more stripes and then becomes green. And then coming back you've got a light blue and different stripes, and here a dark blue. And every second row the colors align. So I work color sequence left to right, and then I work it right to left, and then I come back, I work it left to right again. And these colors align, every second row align. And also on the other hand, working this way, these rows also align. But they don't align one to one, because we've done that one stitch, we've pulled out those stitches. You'll see that your pattern moves, and this moving, you see here, here's your band, it moves that way and there it continues, and you see here the green comes this way and continues here. And this movement, if it's very sharp edges, you'll tend to call it argyle if you get those beautiful diamond patterns. But for this, and this design is not sharp patterns, it's more soft edges that are flowing. And I actually really like these flowing edges. Now to get really sharp edges, you actually need to have a very, very consistent tension. Now, my tension isn't steady enough here. So you'll see that sometimes your, you can see it in the green here actually reasonably well. Sometimes your jump is one stitch, for example there to there to there, it's a beautiful one stitch. But from there to there your jump is actually quite a few stitches, maybe 5 or 6 stitches. And this is due to my tension not being steady enough. Okay, one of those things. So this means that my design is actually a little bit, not perfect, you might want to call it, but I actually like the effect that this gives. It gives a bit of a playful effect. And in this case, the jump was actually quite long between from here to here. And this could also be because there's a slight variation in the color sequence of the yarn. Now, that also happens because in manufacturing processes there are slight variations. So this could be due to my tension, this large jump here from this row to that row, but it could also be because there's a slight variation in the color sequence. I'm not sure exactly which one is going on here. But either way, it does mean that you get a jump in your sequence. So don't immediately be stressed when you see, okay, it moves more than I wanted to. Just go with the flow, just keep on working your pattern and just see what comes out of that and what unique pattern emerges for your fabric. So in essence what you're going to be doing is you're going to be working one color sequence for row 1, work a color sequence for row 2, and then for row 3 and 4, etc, 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 and continue until you work however many rows you want to work, and then just watch the pattern emerge under your hands. So in essence, you now know everything you need to know to do color pooling and to do argyle color pooling. And argyle is really those sharp diamonds. This is maybe more flowing color pooling than argyle, but nonetheless I really like the effect that this gives.